I wasn't supposed to see it. Not yet. I still don't know if I should even tell you this, but you need to hear it, because if I don't say it aloud, it will suffocate me. My name's Mark, and I spent 3 months in the old county prison, the one people whisper about after lights out, when the guards are tired and the corridors echo with nothing but their own footsteps. That's where I found the door. A door that wasn't on any map, wasn't on any tour, wasn't supposed to exist. I remember the night I first noticed the wall. It was opposite the showers, where the paint had bubbled and peeled, thick and curling like burned skin. The smell of damp concrete was heavier than usual, like wet stone and rot mixed with something sweeter, something wrong. I pressed my palm to the wall, thinking it was just mold or some damp patch, and the air behind. My fingers felt hollow, too hollow, like there was space beyond, space I wasn't meant to touch. I was alone that night. The cell block was empty, except for the usual clatter of the night shift and the occasional cough down the hall. I swear I heard whispers, soft and hissing, just at the edge of hearing. But when I turned, nothing was there. The wall stayed quiet, except for the hollow thrum beneath my palm. My skin crawled. I stepped back, thinking I'd imagined it. Then I saw the faint outline of a rectangle in the peeling paint. I should have left it alone. I should have walked back to my cell, pulled the blanket over my head, and pretended it never existed. But curiosity is cruel, and fear makes you reckless. The outline of the door seemed wrong. The hinges weren't visible, no handle. Just a rectangle pressed into the concrete, faintly darker than the wall around it. And beneath it, a faint draft. A draft from inside the wall. I swear, whatever I felt that night wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, like a warning, like the prison itself was trying to stop me. My heart was hammering so loud, I thought the guards would hear it down the empty hall. I reached for it, just to touch, to confirm it was real. And when my fingers brushed the cold surface, I heard it. A sound low and wet, like someone or something breathing inside the wall. I froze, and then I heard a whisper that made my blood run ice. Not a voice I recognized, but one that knew my name. I couldn't move. My fingers were still pressed against the wall, and that breath, soft, wet, deliberate, shivered through the concrete straight into my bones. My mind screamed to pull back, but my body refused. I wanted to tell myself it was the pipes, the wind, a trick of the shadows, anything that would let me believe I wasn't insane. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. The draft grew stronger, curling around my wrist like smoke. And then came a smell, sharp, metallic, and sweet at the same time. Blood, or maybe decay, I don't know. My stomach twisted. I tried to step away, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. There was a pulse behind the wall, a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I pressed my ear to the cold concrete. At first, there was only silence. Then it came, a faint scratching, almost like claws, running across the other side, slow and patient. The sound made the hair on my arms stand on end. I could feel it through the wall, a vibration that seemed alive, purposeful. I thought of screaming, of calling for a guard, but my throat was dry, my voice was gone. And then I heard it clearly. A whisper this time, deliberate and low, almost tender. "Mark," it said, Just my name, stretched and drawn, like it was savoring the syllables. My knees buckled, and I fell back against the damp tile of the hall, gasping. Every instinct screamed to leave, to run, but part of me, the stupid, dangerous part, wanted to know, wanted to find out what was behind the wall. That night, I lay in my bunk, but sleep didn't come. Every creak of the prison, every distant clang of a gate, reminded me of that whisper. Shadows in the corners of my cell seemed thicker, moving differently. I kept telling myself it was stress, the isolation. But the image of the hidden door was burned into my mind. And I started seeing things, small things at first. A flicker of movement near the showers, a reflection that didn't match anyone in the block, always just at the edge of vision, gone when I turned. By the second week, the scratching grew louder. Not at random, always in the middle of the night, always when I was alone. Sometimes it would stop when I froze, holding my breath. Sometimes it would move closer, like whatever was inside was testing the wall. I tried talking to other prisoners, but they'd look at me with those hollow eyes, shake their heads, and say nothing. It was like the prison itself had swallowed this secret and warned them never to speak. And then I started hearing voices beyond my cell door. Not guards, not inmates, something else. Whispering, calling, sometimes laughing, sometimes pleading. I knew it was tied to the door. I didn't know why, but I could feel it. I should have left it alone. I should have ignored it. But then I started seeing the shadows inside the wall, moving like fingers, reaching toward me. By the third week, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The whispers had become words, sometimes sentences, always half heard, never complete. I remember one night, crouched against the wall outside the showers, thinking I could make sense of them. And I swear, I heard something laughing, low, guttural, and wet, like it was enjoying me, my fear, my hesitation. The other inmates started noticing. Not that they said anything. Prisoners don't snitch about feelings, but I could see it in their eyes, the way they glanced at the peeling paint, the way they froze in hallways I walked. They weren't scared of me. They were scared of what I was seeing. And maybe, in some way, they were afraid I would make it worse. I started keeping a journal, notes about the sounds, the drafts, the whispers. About the shadows that lingered in corners even in full light. About the smell, the metallic tang that would rise from the floor tiles, the walls, even the air vents. It followed me, taunted me, coaxed me. Every entry ended with the same hesitation. Should I investigate, or should I leave it buried? And then something new happened. The door moved. Not physically, not in a way I could see with my eyes. But one night, I reached out to touch the outline in the wall, just to confirm it was still there, and it recoiled. I felt it shiver beneath my palm, like a heartbeat, like it was alive. My fingers tingled from the cold, from the thrill, from the terror. I pulled back and pressed my face to the wall, listening. The whispers had changed. Clear now, almost pleading. Come in, it said. The voice was sweet, intimate, but there was hunger behind it. And behind that hunger, something else. A deeper sound, low and wet, like it was waiting, breathing, watching. The next day, I tried to act normal, walk the halls, eat my meals, talk to the guards, but everything reminded me of that wall. The shadows were thicker now, darker. They lingered in my vision, curling at the edges, twisting the corners of rooms. One morning, I saw a shadow stretch from the wall of my cell and touch the ground like a hand. I blinked, and it was gone. I knew it hadn't moved. I just couldn't see it anymore. I began hearing the footsteps first, before the whispers. Heavy, deliberate, slow. They echoed in the hallways where no one was supposed to be. I thought it was the night guard at first, but the footsteps were too soft, too careful. And sometimes I'd hear them on the other side of the wall, walking, waiting, pausing, listening. I started staying near the door when no one else was around. I couldn't help it. I felt pulled, drawn, like some hidden tether from the wall to my chest, tugging, whispering, promising secrets I couldn't resist. One night, it happened. A voice, soft, deliberate, brushing my ear like a feather. Open it. I froze. My blood ran cold. My fingers itched. My stomach twisted. And yet, I touched the outline of the door again. Something moved inside. Something alive. It happened faster than I could have imagined. The wall quivered beneath my hand, subtle at first, like the hum of electricity. Then sharper, like the concrete itself was flexing, breathing. And that smell, the metallic sweetness, poured out of the crack, thick and suffocating, curling into my nose and lungs, clawing at my chest. My heart was pounding. I wanted to pull back, but something, some force, pressed my fingers harder against the cold, trembling surface. And then I heard it clearly. Not a whisper this time, but a voice, deep and ragged, scraping against the edges of my sanity. Mark, it breathed. Low, wet, hungry. And it knew things. Too many things. My nightmares, my regrets, even secrets I hadn't confessed to anyone. It knew. How could it know? The scratches began again, faster, deliberate, like nails tracing a map I couldn't read. I staggered back, pressing my arms to my ears, but the sound penetrated anyway. My skin crawled, my palms itched, my breath caught. And then, a hand. Something cold and wet, slick like river mud, pushed through the crack in the wall. Not the door yet, just a slit, but it was enough. Long, thin fingers, impossibly pale, moving as though they had weight, substance, purpose. I screamed, a sound I hadn't made in years, raw and ragged, echoing down the empty hall. But no one came. The prison was silent. Even the guards' distant footsteps seemed to have vanished. Only the hand remained, stretching further, and behind it, that laughter, low, guttural, and strangely human. It knew I was terrified. It fed on it. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The wall was solid again. The outline of the door remained, innocuous, peeling paint and all. But I knew it hadn't gone. I could feel it watching, waiting, calculating. My chest heaved, my hands shook. Sweat and cold combined, dripping down my temples, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by curiosity, by terror, by the inexplicable pull of that door. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in my cell seemed wrong, stretching toward me, pressing against the thin walls like they had volume, like they were alive. I kept hearing faint breaths, low and wet, from the corner where the showers were. Sometimes I thought I saw something flicker, in the reflection of the metal sink. Not human, but not entirely monstrous either. I started noticing other prisoners disappearing. Not official disappearances. They were just gone. Their bunks empty, their faces absent from the chow line. Guards said nothing, or acted like it was routine. But I knew. I could feel it, and it was connected to the wall, to the door, to whatever waited behind it. I should have told someone. I should have screamed, but I couldn't. I was addicted to the secret, drawn to the whispers, to the shadows that seemed to lean toward me when no one else was watching. And then one night, I swore I heard the wall speak my name, louder, urgent, right behind me. I turned. Nothing. But I wasn't alone. That night changed everything. I woke to a sound I'll never forget, the scraping of fingernails against concrete, slow and deliberate, moving closer, circling my cell like a predator. I froze under the thin blanket, staring at the wall opposite my bunk. But the outline of the hidden door seemed darker somehow, almost breathing. The air smelled sharp, metallic, thick with something I couldn't name. I told myself it was impossible, that it was some trick of my mind, the stress, the hunger, the isolation. But when I slid from my bunk, bare feet cold against the concrete, I saw it. Shadows stretching across the walls, pooling in corners, moving like liquid. My eyes wanted to deny it, but they couldn't. They were drawn, hypnotized. The shadows pulsed, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. Limbs that bent the wrong way, faces without eyes, mouths that whispered words I almost understood. And the door called to me. I could feel it in my chest, a dull thrum, tugging, pressing, demanding. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and pressed against the wall again. The outline shifted under my touch. The door wasn't a door anymore. It was a membrane, pulsing slightly, wet, almost breathing. I could hear it now, whispering, laughing, hissing all at once, 1,000 voices layered together. I thought of the other prisoners, the ones who had vanished. Had they touched it? Opened it? Were they still alive? Or something else had claimed them? The thought made bile rise in my throat, but still, I couldn't step away. My curiosity was a leash wrapped tight around my spine. Then I felt it, a pull from the other side, gentle but insistent, tugging at my hand. My fingers itched to follow, to push, to open it. The wall grew warmer under my palm, almost living, almost sentient. And then a shape formed inside the outline, dark and shifting, taller than a man, limbs twisting, eyes glowing faintly red, staring at me from the other side. I gasped, stumbled back, and fell to the floor, my head spinning. It whispered again. Not my name this time, but a command, soft and compelling. Enter. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw myself against the door, but I couldn't. My body betrayed me. My feet dragged me forward, inch by inch, closer to that wet, breathing surface. The shadows around the cell seemed to stretch toward me, encouraging me, dragging me, feeding me visions of what awaited. Faces of the missing, twisted in terror, reaching out, their mouths open but silent. And then it happened. The door shifted, opened, not like a normal door, but like a wound in reality itself. Lightless, wet darkness beyond, pulsing and breathing, with shapes moving just out of clarity. I could hear them whispering, thousands of voices, sighing, laughing, crying. I froze, my mind screaming, my instincts yelling to retreat. But the door, whatever it was alive. It wanted me inside, and I stepped in. I can't describe it properly, not really. Words fail when you've touched something that shouldn't exist. The darkness swallowed me the instant I crossed the threshold. It wasn't empty. No, it was full, alive, pressing against my skin, tugging at my mind. Wet, slick walls stretched and contracted around me, moving like flesh, pulsing to some rhythm I could feel in my chest. The smell. God, the smell. Decay and iron and something sweet, like rotten fruit soaked in blood. I stumbled forward, my hands grazing the walls, feeling shapes press back, like the darkness itself was alive, studying me, aware of me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Not that it mattered. Whatever was here didn't need sound to know I was there. I could hear voices now, not whispers, but conversations. A million overlapping murmurs in languages I couldn't identify. Some human, some not, some impossibly old. They talked about me, about my fear, about my mistakes, about the exact moment I would break. Then I saw it. Not clearly, not yet, but a form in the distance. Shifting in and out of the black. Taller than a man, hunched, limbs too long, fingers ending in slick, curved tips. Its head tilted in ways that shouldn't be possible. And it watched me. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Every step forward felt like it was pulling me deeper, as if the place itself was a living trap, coiling around me. I stumbled over something soft. A body? No, not human. Something alive, writhing, wet, reaching out as I fell past it. The touch on my ankle was electric, burning, sending waves of nausea and panic up my spine. I scrambled away, but the floor shifted, undulating slightly, trying to throw me off balance, trying to pull me under. The voices whispered again, urgently now. Stay. Join us. I felt my mind beginning to crack. Memories I'd buried, regrets, fears, shame. They came rushing forward, twisted and magnified. The thing in the shadows laughed, low and wet, and the sound merged with the whispers, with my own heartbeat. And then, my reflection, or something like it, a pale, twisted version of me, pressed against the wall of darkness, grinning, fingers reaching through as if it wanted to replace me. I tried to run, tried to scream, but the darkness followed, slapping against my back, curling around my legs, wrapping me in its weight. And I realized I wasn't alone. Others had come here before me. Shapes moved at the edges of my vision, frozen in poses of terror, stretching and twitching. They weren't dead. Not really. Not yet. Then a voice, my voice, whispered from the darkness. Mark, come closer. It's waiting. And I did, because I couldn't help myself. Because the thing behind the door had made me want it. I can still feel it. That pull, that impossible, wet weight pressing against my chest, urging me forward, deeper into that darkness. I couldn't stop myself. My hands grazed the walls again, slick and breathing, and every touch made the whispers louder, sharper, like they were feeding on my terror. Shapes moved just beyond sight, twisting, writhing, reaching out, not to hurt me yet, but to lure me, to study me, to see how far I would go. And then I heard it clearly, close, right beside my ear. Not a voice, not human, not even fully alive, but something ancient, something older than this prison, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to know. Things about the walls, the shadows, the prisoners who'd vanished before me. Names, dates, events, my own mistakes laid bare, twisted into warnings. And then, laughter, low, wet, echoing in my skull. I stumbled, vomiting from the stench, the nausea, the horror. But it didn't care. It never cared. I reached a vast open space, or at least it seemed open. The walls pulsed with life, wet and dark, moving like the interior of some impossible creature. Shapes pressed against it, watching, writhing. I could see faces in the shadows, prisoners, guards, people I knew, people I didn't. Their eyes were empty, black voids, their mouths silent, but moving, whispering my name, laughing, pleading. The thing in the center of the darkness waited, taller than I could comprehend, hunched, limbs bending in ways they never should. Its head tilted slowly, acknowledging me, recognizing me. And then I understood. The whispers, the pull, the shadows. It wasn't just a door. It was a gateway, a feeding ground, a trap. And I was the bait. My hands shook uncontrollably. My chest heaved. My knees buckled and I fell forward, crawling, desperate to retreat. But the darkness followed. Every inch I tried to back away, it pressed closer, folding the air, dragging me. Then a hand, wet, pale, impossibly long, brushed against my shoulder. The thing's touch was electric, burning and cold at once. I screamed silently, my voice swallowed by the walls themselves. And yet part of me, the part I hate admitting, thrilled at the sensation. The proximity. The thing knew me. It could feel me unraveling, could sense every shred of fear and curiosity. And it fed on it. I could see the prisoners. No, not prisoners. Shadows of those who had crossed before me, pressing faces against the pulsing walls, reaching out, pleading, warning. But their voices were drowned in the chorus of whispers, the wet breathing, the laughter. And I realized I wasn't going to leave this place. Not willingly, not without understanding what the door demanded. The thing leaned closer, a whisper brushing my ear, cold and wet. Do you see now? And I did. I saw the end of me. I never thought I'd see the light again. Not really. Not after the walls began to move, pulse, and breathe, alive with the shapes of those who had disappeared before me. The thing, whatever it was, loomed in the center, taller than any man, twisting in ways that should be impossible, its limbs bending, stretching, folding like a nightmare in motion. Its presence pressed against my chest, tugging at my mind, whispering promises and threats at once. I tried to retreat, but the darkness followed. Every step backward was met with resistance, like it had weight, substance, and intent. The whispers became a chorus, voices overlapping, layering, echoing through my skull. Names I didn't know, names I did. My own, mine, repeated over and over. I covered my ears, but it didn't matter. It was inside me now, inside my thoughts, inside my heartbeat. I reached for the only thing I could think of, the outline of the door. My hands trembled as I pressed against it, feeling the slick, wet life beneath my fingers. The thing leaned closer, and I could feel its hot, rancid breath, smell the decay, the iron, the sweetness of rot. I thought of all the prisoners who had vanished, all the lives consumed by this door, this gateway. My chest heaved, my stomach twisted, and yet I couldn't stop myself. I wanted to know. I had to know. The door shifted. The wall gave way like skin over bone, wet and breathing, pulsating, opening slowly to reveal the abyss beyond. Shapes moved inside, countless forms pressing and twisting, writhing and stretching toward me. Faces familiar and alien, pale and wet, some screaming silently, others reaching with impossible hands. The thing extended one long limb, curling toward me, and in that instant, I understood. The door didn't just want me inside. It wanted me to stay, to become part of it, to feed it, to forget myself entirely. I hesitated. A single impossible moment. I could turn and run if I dared. But the walls, the shadows, the whispers, they were everywhere, pulling, pushing, demanding. The thing tilted its head, watching, patient, knowing I would choose. My mind screamed for escape. My body moved forward. I stepped through. The darkness swallowed me whole. I felt myself unraveling, bones dissolving into shadow, flesh becoming pulsing walls, thoughts becoming whispers. And somewhere, deep inside, I heard the laughter. The wet, guttural laughter that had followed me from the start. It was everywhere. Inside me, outside me, the prison, the door, the shadows, all one. I was lost, and yet I write this now. Somehow, some part of me remains. A fragment, a whisper, a warning. If you ever find a hidden door, in a prison, in a wall, anywhere, don't touch it. Don't listen to the whispers. Don't let it pull you in, because if you do, you'll never come back, and it will know your name. The second story is the ghosts of prisoners who never left and are still here. I shouldn't be telling you this. I shouldn't even be alive to tell it. But here I am, sitting in the corner of my apartment, the lights off, whispering because if I say it too loud, it might hear me. It started the night I first stepped foot in the old prison on Hawthorne Hill. The air there, thick, iron sweet, like blood that's been left to rot, hit me before the guards even gave me a look. I was just a contractor, fixing the wiring in the east wing, but something in that place made my skin crawl before I'd even unlocked the first door. The corridors stretched farther than they should have, at least according to the blueprints I'd memorized. Each hallway smelled the same: old sweat, damp concrete, a faint hint of something metallic that wasn't blood, but it felt like it. The echoes weren't just echoes either. They answered you, softly, sometimes, like someone breathing behind your ear. But when you spun around, there was nothing. And I thought I was imagining it. At first, the inmates were gone, mostly. The prison had been shut down decades ago. But the voices, sometimes, I swear, they weren't in my head. The whispers followed me from cell to cell, low and pleading, or angry, or worst of all, confused. One cell in particular, the old solitary block, felt different. The walls were thicker there. Yet somehow the sound inside them leaked out, jagged and hollow. I remember pausing in front of the door, hand on the metal, feeling the temperature drop. It was summer outside, stifling, but inside that corridor, the air tasted of frost and rot. I turned the knob, almost against my own better judgment, and the door didn't resist. It shouldn't have opened. It was supposed to be sealed, decades of rust and disuse, but it swung inward silently, too smoothly. And then I saw it. Not a person, not exactly, but something curled in the corner, like smoke had taken shape, and it moved when I blinked. Just a little, barely perceptible, but enough. I froze. The kind of freeze that sinks into your bones and roots you to the spot. And then I heard it. My name, whispered, urgent, from the shadows. My own name, but not my voice. Someone else's, older, ragged, like they'd been waiting decades to say it. I couldn't look away, couldn't step back, and something about the shape in that corner didn't just feel wrong. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. Not yet. I left the cell. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the flashlight. But when I turned to check the corridor, the hallway had shifted. I know it sounds impossible, but the walls were closer, darker, as if the prison had exhaled while I wasn't looking. And then I realized I wasn't alone. The whispers were everywhere now, just behind my ears, brushing against my neck. And one thought slammed into me so hard, I nearly dropped the flashlight. Some of the prisoners never left. I shouldn't have opened that door, but I did, and that was the first mistake. After that first glimpse, I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the shadows, the way the light hit the walls, anything but real. But the more I walked, the louder it became. The whispers weren't confined to the solitary block anymore. They were everywhere, weaving through the corridors like smoke, brushing my ears, tickling the back of my neck, murmuring secrets I couldn't quite understand. I swear I heard one voice say, "You don't belong here," though I was the only one in the hallway. I started keeping track of the time, though it meant nothing. The prison had its own rhythm. Hours stretched, floors shifted. Stairwells led somewhere you hadn't been 5 minutes ago. And every door I passed seemed to breathe. Tiny movements, hinges groaning softly, though they were sealed shut. I told myself it was just the building settling. But that wasn't it. Something wanted me to notice. Something wanted me to follow. I found the first notebook on the floor in what used to be the prison library. It wasn't mine. The cover was cracked and faded, the pages yellowed. Inside were scribbles, almost unreadable. Names, dates, desperate pleas, warnings written in a hand that trembled too violently to belong to anyone sane. And one line, repeated over and over, burned itself into my mind. They never leave. We never leave. I dropped the notebook. My fingers shook as though I'd touched something alive. The whisper shifted immediately after, as if the building was laughing. And then I felt it, a weight on my shoulder, feather light but insistent, like someone had pressed against me from behind. I spun around. Nothing. The corridor was empty, but the air had changed. It smelled of decay and old blood, thick enough to make my stomach churn. I began hearing footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing differently than mine. I stopped moving. They stopped. I moved again. They followed. Always just behind, never visible. Always right there. By the time I reached the infirmary, I was sweating, not from the heat, but from fear pressing into my chest. There was a smell of antiseptic, long gone, mixed with something foul, something rotting. And then I saw it in the corner of my eye. A sheep, thin, elongated, shadowed, leaning against the wall. When I blinked, it was closer. And with it came a whisper, sharp this time, angry, insistent. You shouldn't be here. I couldn't respond. My throat had locked up. My flashlight wavered in my hand. I wanted to run, but the corridors seemed endless. I could hear chains rattling in the distance. No, not chains. Bones. Footsteps, dragging, pacing, circling. And then one of the whispers, soft and pleading this time, pressed against my ear. Stay. Don't leave. I froze. The building itself seemed to lean in, walls humming, vibrating almost imperceptibly, as though alive. And that was when I saw movement behind the barred windows of the cells. 100 faces, pale and hollow, staring, unblinking, watching me. I knew they weren't real. They couldn't be, and yet every instinct screamed that if I turned away, if I looked too long, I'd see something I'd never unsee. And then, as if mocking me, one of the shadows stepped out from a wall that shouldn't have had a door. It didn't walk, it glided, and it was smiling. I should have run then, but my legs refused. My feet were rooted to the cracked concrete, and the shadow's smile, it wasn't human. Its mouth stretched too wide, too many teeth, glinting in the faint light, and its eyes, if you could call them that, were pools of nothingness. I thought I might be imagining it, and then I felt the air move, heavy and suffocating, brushing against my cheek like a living hand. I stumbled backward, almost colliding with a cell door. Inside, a prisoner sat perfectly still, his head tilted, staring straight at me. His face was pale, skeletal, and yet I could swear his eyes were full of rage. He didn't blink. He didn't move. I didn't dare speak. I felt my own breath, loud, ragged, betraying me. Then came the scratching. From the walls, from the floors, nails or claws, dragging across metal and stone, slow, deliberate, echoing with unnatural resonance. Every hair on my body stood up. I tuned my flashlight in every direction, but the hallways were empty. Or maybe they weren't. Something moved just beyond the cone of light. Always. Just beyond reach. Always just out of sight. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, the isolation, the heat mixed with the musty air. But then I saw the reflection. Not in a mirror. There weren't mirrors in the prison, but in the broken glass of an old window. My reflection was wrong. My eyes were hollow, my mouth slightly open, and something else crouched behind me. Something small, thin, dark, impossible. I spun around. Nothing. But when I looked back at the window, it was still there, closer, smiling. I kept walking, faster now, heart hammering. Every step felt like I was sinking deeper into some trap. The whispers followed me, overlapping now, a cacophony of pleas, anger, laughter, and despair. Names were called, some mine, some I didn't recognize. Don't leave. Stay. We need you. They were everywhere. Inside my skull, against my ears, vibrating through the floorboards, through the walls. Then I reached the mess hall. Empty, shattered tables, rusty trays scattered like forgotten graves. But the smell, oh God, the smell was worse than anything I'd imagined. Old food, mold, and decay layered with something metallic, something fresh. I froze. The whispers intensified. And then I heard the dragging again. Footsteps, soft at first, then louder, circling the room. I looked up and saw dozens of shadows hanging from the ceiling beams. They weren't swinging. They were staring, silent, motionless. I swallowed hard, dry, my throat raw. That's when I noticed the writing on the wall, smeared, half erased, scratched into the paint. They never left. You will never leave. My flashlight flickered. I thought I saw movement behind the letters, shapes twisting, writhing like smoke, and then the dragging stopped. Dead silence. I wanted to run, to leave, but every exit led to another hallway I didn't recognize. The building was alive, shifting, moving, mocking me. And from somewhere behind me came a whisper, soft, coaxing, almost sweet. Why are you so afraid? You're one of us now. I spun around. The hallway was empty, but I knew it wasn't. By the time I reached the warden's old office, I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. Every corridor I'd memorized had warped into something unrecognizable. The ceiling sagged. The walls groaned. Even the floor seemed to pulse beneath my feet, faintly, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. My flashlight flickered, the battery struggling, and in that stuttering light, I saw movement. Figures darting just beyond the edges, twisting, impossibly thin, too fast to focus on. I shouldn't have gone into the office. I know that now, but I needed to know. I needed to understand what the hell was happening. Papers lay scattered on the floor, brittle with age. The desk drawers were empty except for one. I pulled it open, and inside were photographs. Prisoners, lined up in years, decades past. But some faces were wrong. Hollowed eyes, stretched mouths, bodies slumping unnaturally. And in the corner of each photo, etched faintly in pencil, was the same word. Stayed. That's when I heard it. A laugh, low and wet, like something tearing through air. Behind me, a door slammed somewhere in the building. I whirled, flashlight swinging wildly. Shadows poured from the cracks around the door, writhing shapes reaching for me with impossibly long limbs. I bolted. I didn't care where I was going, just away from that sound, that presence. I ran down a hallway I didn't recognize, the whispers now layered with moans, screams, fragments of conversations I couldn't place. And then I saw them, at the end of the corridor, emerging from a wall that shouldn't have existed, were prisoners. Not ghosts, not memories. Living, breathing, or at least moving. Horribly wrong. Their skin was pale, stretched tight over their faces, eyes black and empty. They shuffled toward me with jerking movements, hands raised, mouths opening and closing without sound. I stopped, paralyzed, and then I realized one of them was wearing my jacket, my own clothes, somehow stolen from the apartment I'd left that morning. My stomach twisted, my head spun. The figure raised its hand, pointing at me. And in a voice that was mine, but not mine, it whispered, "You shouldn't be here. I turned to flee, but the hallway had changed. Doors that weren't there before opened into walls. Windows revealed nothing but infinite blackness. And then I felt the first real touch. Not air, not shadow, but hands on my shoulders. Cold, clammy, firm. I screamed, wrenching free, and ran. Somehow, I found myself in the prison chapel. The pews were broken, splintered. Candles burned along the walls, though there were no matches to light them. And in the altar's shadows, I saw them clearly for the first time. Hundreds of prisoners, eyes hollow, bodies malformed, faces twisted in eternal anguish. And in the center, a figure taller than the rest, almost floating, staring directly at me. It didn't move, not really. It just waited. And I knew, with that sinking certainty that comes when you understand something you wish you didn't, that whatever this was, it had been waiting for me. I wanted to leave. I had to leave, but every path out seemed to fold back on itself. Every doorway led me deeper, and in that moment, I realized this prison doesn't just trap bodies, it traps souls. And mine, it was starting to feel very heavy. I stayed in the chapel longer than I should have, not out of courage, but because I didn't know where else to go. The shadows around the altar didn't move, but they weren't still either. It was like they were breathing, inhaling and exhaling in a rhythm that matched my own heartbeat, except slower, heavier. And then I felt it, a hand brushing against my cheek. Not a cold hand, wet, sticky, warm in a way that made me gag. I flinched, but when I turned, nothing was there. I tried to tell myself it was fear, exhaustion, hunger maybe, anything to explain away what I'd seen. But when I looked at the pews, I saw small, dark figures scuttling between the splintered wood. They were too fast to track, small enough that I couldn't make out features, and yet I felt their eyes on me, everywhere at once. I don't know how long I stared. Time doesn't exist in that place. Then I heard the first clear voice. Not a whisper, not fragmented, but a full sentence. Low, resonant, coming from inside my skull and the chapel at the same time. Why do you fall it? I spun. My flashlight fell. The beam quivered across the floor, illuminating a figure kneeling in the middle of the altar. Its head tilted, the empty sockets of its eyes boring into me. And then more voices joined, echoing from every direction. Shouting, pleading, laughing. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just in my ears. It was in my chest, in my bones, rattling them, shaking them apart. I backed up, stumbled, and tripped over something. When I looked down, it was another notebook, pages torn out and scattered. And scribbled on the floor in dark, sticky letters were words that made my stomach seize. They will keep you. You will stay. My skin crawled. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't pick the notebook up. But I knew it didn't matter. Whether I ran or hid, they would find me. A shadow moved across the altar. Not a person, not a thing, but a shape that shouldn't exist. And then it spoke again, voice dragging through the chapel like smoke. Join us. Something that wasn't human, lunged. Not a blur, not a trick of the light, but solid, cold, and heavy. I hit the floor. Pain shot through my ribs, but I scrambled up and ran. I didn't know where I was going. Hallways twisted and folded impossibly. Doors led to rooms I'd never seen, yet the whispers followed me. calling my name, mocking me, dragging me deeper. And then I saw them again. The prisoners. Not the small shadows, not the twisting forms, but the full faces, pale, hollow, staring at me. They weren't moving toward me this time. They were already surrounding me. I could feel the air press against my chest, as though the room itself was compressing. I gasped, my legs refusing to carry me, and for the first time, I felt dread that wasn't just fear. This wasn't survival anymore. This was inevitability. And when one of the figures raised a hand, beckoning me closer, I understood. The ghosts of prisoners who never left weren't just watching, they were waiting. I don't even remember how I got out of the chapel. One moment I was backed against the altar, the shadows pressing in, whispering my name. The next, I was stumbling down a hallway that shouldn't exist. The walls were slick, as though damp with sweat or blood, or both, and the air reeked of iron and rot. My flashlight was dead, but I didn't care anymore. I was moving on instinct, heart hammering, lungs burning, every nerve screaming that if I stopped, I'd be consumed. I kept hearing footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, echoing differently than mine. They weren't following exactly. They were synchronizing with me, matching my pace, keeping just far enough away to make me spin around constantly. And in every window, every shard of glass, I saw them. Faces pressed close, eyes black, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. I tried to run faster, but my legs felt like they were moving through molasses. And then the first touch. A hand landed on my shoulder, and I swear it wasn't just pressure. It was memory. It was fear. It was everything that had happened here centuries ago pressing into me. I spun. Nobody, but the weight lingered. My heart lurched into my throat. I saw a doorway at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. A faint light spilled through. I ran toward it, desperate, and stepped inside. The room looked normal, like an office, like the outside world had intruded. But something was off. Papers were scattered across the floor, and on one, written in blood, or something like it, was my name. My full name. And beneath it, "You belong here." I stumbled back, gagging, and that's when I saw it. The reflection in the window. Me, sure, but not me. My eyes were hollow, my mouth twitching unnaturally. And behind me, pressed against the glass, were dozens of faces. Faces I didn't know. Faces I knew from old photographs. Faces twisted and broken. And they were smiling. I ran. Hallways twisted. Doors led nowhere. Floors shifted. I could hear them now, whispering and shouting at once. "Stay. Join us. You can't leave." I reached what looked like a stairwell, ran down, and found myself back at the chapel. The altar was empty, but the whispers were louder, now inside my head, circling, mocking, pleading. I realized something horrible. It didn't matter where I went. Every hallway, every room, every doorway led back into the prison, or into its illusion. I wasn't trapped physically. I was trapped mentally. My own fear had built these walls, and now they were solid. And then I felt them all around me. The prisoners, hundreds, thousands, pressing closer. Their cold hands brushing my arms, their breath on my neck. The weight of centuries pressed into me. I couldn't scream. My voice was gone. One of them leaned close. Its eyes black, endless. Its voice, mine, yet not mine, whispered, "Why do you resist? We've been waiting for you." And that's when I understood. This wasn't just a prison. This was a hunger, a place that didn't release, that didn't forget, that didn't forgive. I tried to fight, tried to claw my way out, but the walls themselves seemed to pulse, trapping me. And the whisper followed, insistent, knocking, relentless. "You can't leave. Not really. Not ever." I don't even know how long I ran. Minutes? Hours? Days? Time had no meaning in that place. The corridors shifted under my feet like living things. The walls breathing, expanding, contracting. Every door I opened led me deeper. Every stair I descended rose me higher. And the whispers, they were inside my head now, entwined with my thoughts, inseparable from my own voice. I collapsed in what looked like a cell, one I had passed dozens of times but never noticed before. The air was thick, almost liquid, and the smell, oh God, the smell was unbearable. Old sweat, decay, iron, and something worse. I could feel it crawling along my skin, brushing my hair, seeping into my pores. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My own body had betrayed me. And then I saw them, pressed against the bars. Hundreds of faces, hollow, twisted, watching me. They weren't alive, but they weren't dead either. They were suspended, existing between something and nothing. Their eyes followed me, empty but full of expectation. One stepped forward, gliding, smiling too wide, teeth too sharp. "You belong with us," it said, and it sounded like every voice I had ever heard. "You've stayed long enough." I backed away, but there was no space. The walls moved closer, the ceiling pressed down, and behind me I felt the touch again. Hundreds of hands, light as feathers but heavy as stone, brushing over me, anchoring me in place. The whispers crescendoed, 1,000 voices screaming in unison, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath fog in front of me. A figure appeared directly in front of me, tall, impossibly thin, its face a hollow mask of every prisoner who had ever walked these halls, and yet it was looking right through me, inside me, and in that moment, I felt the truth. Unbearable. Impossible. I wasn't running from them. I was running toward them. Every step I'd taken, every hallway I'd fled down, had led me here. This was where I was always meant to be. The hands tightened. The shadows surged. I felt myself being lifted, drawn into the darkness between walls, between floors, between moments. And then the whispers, all at once, became one voice, and it was my own. "You can't leave. You never leave. You'll never leave." I screamed, but the sound was absorbed, swallowed by the building itself. The shadows surrounded me completely, pressing into my eyes, my ears, my chest. And in that moment, I realized something worse than death. This was eternity. A waiting, a watching, a hunger that never ended. The last thing I felt before everything went black was a smile brushing against my cheek. My own smile, but wrong. Hollow, endless, waiting. And a whisper, "Welcome home." When I woke, I wasn't sure if I was alive, or if I'd ever been alive. The room smelled like metal and ash, thick and suffocating. My body ached in ways I couldn't name. Muscles that shouldn't exist were sore. Bones I didn't know I had throbbed. The walls were close, too close, like the prison had followed me, stretching around me, compressing me into its darkness. I tried to move. My legs were weak, trembling, but I forced them under me. And then I saw them, the shadows, every face, every prisoner who had ever stayed. They weren't behind walls, weren't in the corner of my eyes. They were all around me, floating, shifting, watching, waiting. Their eyes, black, hollow, and impossibly deep. And when they opened their mouths, it wasn't sound I heard. It was understanding. "You came back," one whispered. Or maybe it was my own voice. I couldn't tell anymore. You couldn't leave. I wanted to scream, to claw my way out, to shatter the walls. But the shadows didn't let me. They were in my chest, in my lungs, in my mind. Every heartbeat was theirs, every thought, every hesitation. And I realized whatever I was feeling, whatever terror gripped me, it was nothing. Nothing compared to eternity in those corridors, in those cells, trapped, consumed, waiting. Then the tallest one stepped forward, face a swirling collage of every prisoner I'd ever seen. Its hand reached for me. I flinched, but it wasn't a touch. It was a pull, an invitation, a command. I felt my body rise, lifted by unseen forces, and my vision began to twist. The room folded, the ceiling became floor, the walls became endless hallways, corridors that led nowhere and everywhere. "You stay," it whispered, soft now, intimate. The sound curling around my skull. "And when you think you've escaped, you'll find yourself back. You're ours." The shadows surged, closer, tighter, pressing into every inch of me. And then I saw it, my reflection, twisted and wrong, staring back from a broken shard of glass on the floor. Hollow eyes, a mouth stretched too wide, and a smile that was mine, but not mine. I wanted to run, to fight, but I couldn't. I was already inside them. Already inside the prison. Already one of them. And the final thing I felt, the last sensation before all light, all thought, all hope was gone, was the smile brushing my cheek. Warm, familiar, endless, and a whisper curling into my ear. "Welcome home, forever." The room, the walls, the air, they consumed me. And I understood. There was no escape. There never had been. End. A third story is the most haunted prison in America. I woke up to the sound of metal scraping against concrete. A slow, deliberate rhythm that didn't belong anywhere but here. I'm in the Eastern State Penitentiary, America's most haunted prison. And the first thing I realized was that the guards weren't coming. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. The air is thick with mildew and something worse. Something that sticks to your lungs if you breathe too deep. My flashlight flickers, a weak pulse in a black so complete it feels alive. And I swear I can hear the walls breathing back at me. I wasn't supposed to be here alone. This was a sanctioned overnight research visit, they said. Observe and report, they said. But I know now that they never told me the truth. They didn't warn me that the hallways could shift if you looked away, that shadows might trail you even when no one else is near. The first hour was easy, too easy. Echoes of footsteps from empty cells, distant clanging of gates, and the occasional hollow groan of the building settling. But then I noticed the silence that followed. Silence doesn't belong here, not at Eastern State. I keep my flashlight trained on the peeling paint and rusty bars, trying to convince myself this is just old prison decay. But my gut knows otherwise. I smelled something last night, something coppery and wet, like blood mixed with rust, and something rotten I can't name. I followed it down a corridor, thinking maybe it was the pipes. The smell led me instead to a cell that shouldn't exist. Its door was dented and warped, the number scratched off decades ago, and inside there was nothing. Nothing. But the air was thick, heavy, like it was watching me. Every instinct tells me to leave. Every rational thought screams that this is a mistake. Yet I can't. Something keeps pulling me deeper. A curiosity that feels like claws dragging me forward. There's a whisper too, faint but unmistakable, curling around my ears. Not words I can understand, more like a sigh, but it's close. Too close. I spun around once, twice, flashlight slicing through shadows. Empty. Always empty. Then I saw it. I didn't mean to. I wasn't even looking directly at it. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure crouched in the doorway at the end of the hall. Just a shadow, I told myself. A trick of the light. But when I blinked, it was gone. And yet when I stepped forward, the temperature dropped, and the whisper grew into something sharper, angrier. I realized I wasn't imagining it. Something was in here. Something that didn't want me to leave. I can still feel its gaze, the way it presses against your mind. Without touching, I don't know what it wants or why it hasn't come closer. But I know one thing. The prison is alive in ways I didn't understand. The walls breathe. The floors moan. And the shadows, God, the shadows, they move when you don't look. I should have run. I should have left. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and I had already taken the first step. That's when I heard the scratching again. Closer this time, from the cell next to me. Slow, deliberate, almost patient, and beneath it, a voice, or something like a voice, saying softly, "Don't leave." I froze. The door across the hall slammed shut. The first thing I noticed when I moved down the hall was how every sound seemed to echo differently. Footsteps, my own heartbeat, even the drip of water from a rusted pipe. They all stretched, warped, like the building itself was listening and adjusting. My flashlight caught glimpses of cells, empty cells, but every few steps, I could swear, something shifted in the corner of my vision. A shadow just beyond the light, a shape that shouldn't be there. I kept telling myself it was my imagination. I needed to believe that. I passed cell after cell, each one more decayed than the last. Graffiti, scratched into the walls decades ago, warned of things I couldn't decipher, and some of it was newer, fresh. The words, "He's watching," were scrawled in jagged letters across a wall just ahead. My stomach tightened. Who would write that here? And why would it feel like it wasn't meant for me? It was meant for someone else, someone who had come before, and perhaps never left. I stopped at a door that was cracked slightly open, light spilling out in a sickly orange glow. I didn't know where it came from. No bulbs worked down this hall. And then the air changed. The smell of rot and rust intensified. My skin crawled. I could feel the pulse of the prison itself, subtle, like a heartbeat under the floorboards. My hand brushed the doorframe, and the metal was warm. Too warm. And when I peered inside, nothing, except the feeling, like someone or something had just left. I thought about turning back. I really did. But then I heard it. Soft scratching again, closer than ever, right above my head. The ceiling pipes shuddered. A long, low groan followed, like the prison itself exhaling. And then a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. "Don't go." My flashlight flickered violently. In that brief stutter of light, I saw a figure dart across the far wall. Not a human figure. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent wrong. When the light steadied, nothing was there. My breath came fast. The echo of footsteps behind me made my chest tighten. Though I knew no one was following, I moved faster, but I had no destination. Every corridor seemed to fold into itself. One hall became 2, then 3, then 4. Doors appeared where there had been walls. Cells were rearranging themselves. The prison was alive in a way I had never imagined, and it was learning me, memorizing my fear. And then I heard a voice I recognized. Arbaz. I spun, my own name unmistakable. The sound came from the shadows, from the depths of the hall. But I was alone, absolutely alone. My pulse slammed against my ribs as I tried to rationalize it. A guard? No, there were no guards. Another visitor? Impossible. And yet the whisper came again, soft and deliberate. You shouldn't be here. The temperature dropped sharply. My breath became visible, curling in the beam of the flashlight. My eyes strained through the darkness. I thought I saw movement, a dark figure pressing itself against the wall. Not quite human, not quite shadow. And then it lunged. Nothing hit me. But the sound, oh, the sound, was a scream. Not a human scream. Something deep, ragged, ancient. And it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. I ran, and the laughter followed me. I don't remember exactly how long I ran. Time in that place doesn't follow the rules, you know. 1 second, I was sprinting down a narrow corridor, the walls breathing, shadows curling like smoke. And the next, I was in a room I didn't recognize. High ceilings, barred windows, floor tiles cracked with age. My flashlight was bouncing wildly, casting grotesque shapes against the walls. I could hear my own ragged breathing. But beneath it was something else. Something moving with me, just beyond the edges of the light. I tried to keep calm. I told myself it was stress, the adrenaline, the old stories about the prison getting to me. But my gut was screaming otherwise. Every step left a ringing in my ears, a vibration that didn't come from my own movement. I smelled something pungent, iron and decay, mixed with a faint sweetness, like rotting flowers, and it was close. Too close. Then I saw it, a figure standing at the end of the hall, not crouched, not darting, just standing. Tall, impossibly still, framed in shadows, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I blinked. It was gone, and yet I could feel its attention like a weight on my shoulders. My flashlight flickered, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw eyes glowing from inside a cell. Not human eyes, hollow, black, unblinking. I pressed forward, forcing myself not to scream. Each door I passed seemed to whisper in a language I almost recognized. A prayer? A warning? I didn't know. I didn't want to. and the corridors kept stretching, twisting, leading me deeper. It wasn't just the prison anymore. It was a labyrinth alive with malice. A clanging sound echoed from above, like chains dragged across the floor. I looked up and froze. A shadow crawled along the ceiling, limbs bending wrong, scraping metal, whispering my name. Arbaz! Arbaz! My heartbeat thumped violently, but I couldn't stop looking. My body moved, almost on its own, down the hall, toward a door I had never seen before. Its frame was warped, blackened, like it had been burned, and behind it, I could hear breathing, not mine. The air thickened, and my flashlight dimmed to a flicker. I could hear something moving closer, soft, deliberate steps, but no sound of feet. The sound was everywhere. Inside the walls, behind me, in my head. And then a voice, low and guttural, rasped directly into my ear. Why are you here? I spun, but nothing was there. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my feet carried me forward, toward the door that shouldn't exist. I reached it and pressed my palm against the warped wood. Ice. Freezing ice. I tried to pull away, but my hand stuck as though the door itself had claimed me. And then I saw them. Dozens of figures, pressed against the walls, the floors, the ceilings, all of them staring. Empty eyes, elongated limbs, some with mouths too wide to be human. They didn't move, just watched. And as I looked, one of them lifted its head and whispered, perfectly clear, "You belong here." I yanked my hand free and stumbled backward. My flashlight fell, spinning light across the room. When it landed, I saw something I'll never forget. A cell, empty except for a single figure sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth. Its face, my own face. I screamed. The sound of my own scream ricocheted down the hall, bouncing off steel and stone until it didn't sound like my voice anymore. It sounded layered, distorted, as if the walls were mocking me. I scrambled for the flashlight, my fingers numb and clumsy, the beam jerking wildly across the cracked tiles. When I lifted it toward the cell again, the figure was gone, empty, silent, only dust and darkness staring back. But I know what I saw. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't stress. I saw myself sitting there, rocking like an inmate who'd lost his mind decades ago. The image clings to me even now, my hollow eyes, my lips moving silently. Whispering words I couldn't hear. What was I saying? Why did I look so broken? The corridor groaned. A door somewhere behind me slammed shut with the force of a shotgun blast. My whole body jolted, and the beam of my flashlight skittered across the ceiling. For the briefest second, something was clinging there, long fingers hooked into stone, a gaunt torso bending downward, its head craning too far. It pulled itself back into shadow, with a sound like dry bones cracking. I don't think it ever touched the ground. I staggered backward, but the hall stretched out endlessly. Cells lined both sides, most yawning open like hungry mouths. I could swear I saw movement inside some of them. The shuffle of bare feet, the dragging of fingers against steel bars. When I stopped, the noises stopped. When I breathed, the shadows seemed to pulse. expanding and contracting in rhythm with my lungs. "Get out!" a voice whispered. Not mine, not even close. It came from the next cell over, a rasping voice, weak but commanding. I swung the light, and for an instant, I saw a pale face pressed between the bars, skin gray, eyes dark as holes, then gone, just rust and dust again. But I believed it. That command wasn't a warning. It was a curse, and the air felt heavier for it. My chest ached with every breath, like the atmosphere itself was pressing down, punishing me for still being there. I tried to retrace my steps, but the corridors weren't the same. A hallway I knew I had come from was bricked over. Doors had shifted, and every turn I made seemed to pull me deeper instead of out. That's when I saw the first real proof. On the wall ahead, scratched deep into the plaster, were words written in frantic, jagged strokes. I was here. I never left. The scratches were fresh. Too fresh. White dust still clung to the grooves, flakes resting on the floor beneath. Someone had made them not long before I arrived. The beam of my flashlight trembled as I swept it across the next cell. Inside, chains rattled. Not loud, just enough to let me know something was awake. And then, one by one, the cell doors began to close. Bang, bang, bang. Iron slamming shut, each louder than the last, echoing down the corridor like a countdown. I backed away, hands slick with sweat, until the last door clanged shut with such violence it shook the ground beneath me. And then, silence. My breath hung in the cold air. My skin prickled with static. I thought, hoped it was over, that maybe the building had only wanted to scare me. But when I turned, there was a shape standing at the far end of the corridor, human-sized, still, watching. And this time, it didn't vanish when I blinked. It stood there, motionless, its silhouette warped by the trembling light of my flashlight. My throat went dry. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but my legs refused. It wasn't just standing, it was waiting. Patient, deliberate, like it had been here long before me and knew I would come. I forced myself to whisper, "Who are you?" My voice cracked, swallowed by the walls. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, but the air shifted, colder, heavier, as though the entire prison leaned closer to hear my question. The silence stretched until it was unbearable. Then, it tilted its head, slowly, too slowly. The sound wasn't right. Not bone, not muscle. Something grinding, snapping, like wood breaking under pressure. My stomach lurched. I stepped back, nearly tripping over a broken pipe, and my flashlight flickered, betraying me. In that stutter of light, the figure wasn't at the end of the hall anymore. It was closer. I swallowed a cry, jerking the beam back down the corridor. Empty. My heart slammed in my chest, hard enough to hurt. I told myself I was imagining it, that my mind was twisting shadows into shapes. But then I felt it, warm breath against my ear. "You saw yourself." I spun, swinging the flashlight, but there was no one there. Only rust, dust, and endless black. Yet the words burned into me. Whoever or whatever it was, it knew what I'd seen in that cell. My own face, my own madness, and it wanted me to remember. I staggered forward, desperate now. Desperate to find an exit, any exit. My boots scraped against the floor, the sound too loud, too vulnerable in the silence. Somewhere ahead, chains dragged. I heard footsteps too, slow, deliberate, out of sync with my own. And then, faintly, like a memory carved into the walls themselves, came screams. Hundreds of them, overlapping, raw with agony. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound didn't stop. It was inside me. I broke into a run, lungs burning, until I crashed through a doorway into a larger chamber. My light cut across rusted iron staircases spiraling upward, broken railings, and catwalks that led nowhere. The hub of the prison. From here, every corridor branched outward like veins from a heart. The architecture itself seemed wrong. Angles bent subtly off. Stairs leading into brick walls. Doors hanging crooked, too small or too tall. A place built to disorient. I wasn't alone. I knew it before I saw it. The hair on my arms rose, the skin along my neck prickling. My flashlight swept across the upper balcony, and there it was. The figure, still, watching, except this time I could make out more. Shoulders hunched, arms dangling too long, fingers hooked around the railing like claws. Its face was a blur, like smoke given form. And then, one by one, other shapes emerged from the corridors, feeding into the chamber. Some crawled along the floor, some slithered against the walls. Some stood tall and wrong, bodies twitching in jerks, as if remembering how to move. I was surrounded. The prison had opened itself, and the things inside were awake. I wanted to scream, to fight, to pray, but I couldn't do any of it. My body froze as the air thickened, pressing down like a weight. One of the figures on the balcony leaned over the railing, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You don't leave. No one leaves." And then, every door in the chamber slammed shut at once. The boom of those doors, slamming, shook through my bones. Dust rained from the rafters, and the sound rolled through the chamber like thunder. For a few heartbeats, I couldn't breathe. The flashlight wavered in my shaking hands, the beam catching glimpses of twisted bodies shifting in the shadows above. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were waiting, circling like predators, letting their prey tire itself out. I forced myself toward the center of the room, trying to keep every corner in sight at once. Impossible. Figures blinked in and out of the beam. Hands gripping bars, faces pressed through gaps in the iron railings, mouths stretched too wide in silent screams. Some had no eyes at all, just hollow pits leaking shadow. My legs wanted to buckle, but I clenched my jaw, whispering to myself, "It isn't real. It isn't real." But it was. I knew it was. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Not dragging, not crawling, measured. Heavy boots. I spun the light, expecting another nightmare figure. But it wasn't. It was a man. Or, at least, I thought it was. He wore a prison uniform so decayed, the fabric clung in tatters. His skin was waxy, stretched tight across sharp bones, and his eyes were too clear. Alive. He looked straight at me as he descended, each step deliberate, echoing across the chamber. The other figures stilled at his presence, like they were bowing without moving. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice rough, cracking. "We don't like visitors." I stammered, What do you want from me?" His mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile, though it never reached his eyes. "Want. It isn't about what we want. It's about what you brought." I didn't understand, but the way he said it froze my blood. He stopped halfway down the stairs, tilting his head in that same impossible way I'd seen before. Behind him, something vast and shapeless stirred, like the building itself was alive and listening through him. My light sputtered again. In that blink of darkness, the man wasn't on the stairs anymore. He was right in front of me, inches away. The stench hit first. Rot, copper, damp stone, and his whisper rasped into my ear. "You brought yourself. That's enough." I staggered back, nearly falling. My light swept across the chamber, and the figures moved closer now, creeping along the walls, emerging from cells that hadn't been there seconds ago. Their movements were jerky, broken, but they were closing in. Panic clawed at me, but instinct screamed one word: run. I bolted toward one of the catwalks, lungs heaving, flashlight beam bouncing wildly. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every step shook the metal beneath me, the groan of rusted bolts threatening to give way. The figures hissed, a chorus of whispers following me. "Stay, stay, stay." I reached a door at the far end of the catwalk, praying it would open. The handle was ice cold, but it turned. The door swung inward to reveal a narrow corridor lined with cells. For a brief, trembling moment, I felt relief, until I saw the names scratched into the doors. Names I knew. Names of people I had met, people alive, people who had never set foot in this prison. And at the end of the hall, etched deep into rusted iron, was my own name. The door slammed shut behind me. The clang of the door locking behind me shot through my skull. I spun, yanking the handle, slamming my shoulder against it, but it didn't budge. The air in the corridor was heavier here, like wading through water. My flashlight stuttered, dimming as if it were suffocating too. I forced the beam forward, across the rows of cell doors, and my stomach dropped. The names, dozens of them, etched deep into the iron, like they'd been carved with fingernails and bone. Names I recognized. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, people who had never been here, people who were alive the last time I saw them. I reached out and brushed one of the doors, and the metal burned, cold against my skin. Then I saw my own name again, not scratched in once, but over and over, in layer upon layer, scrawled like madness. Each version of my name seemed older, deeper, as if I'd been here countless times before. My knees almost gave out. Was this prison showing me my future? My past? Or was it telling me something worse, that I had never left? From the nearest cell, something shifted. A dragging sound, nails clawing against the floor. My beam trembled as I lifted it, and there, just behind the bars, was a hand. Pale, veined, nails torn to the quick. It wrapped around the steel and pulled itself forward. Then another hand, and another. They weren't attached to the same body. I stumbled back, the air slicing into my lungs, and the whispering began again. My name, in overlapping voices, male, female, children, old men. A chorus of myself. Arbaz, Arbaz, come inside. The cell doors rattled in unison. One by one, their locks scraped open, though none swung wide. Just cracked, wide enough for something to watch me, to reach if it wanted. I staggered backward, but the hall stretched longer, impossibly so, each step pulling me deeper, instead of closer to escape. A sudden, sharp cold stabbed into my shoulder. I spun, flashlight beam cutting across the cell to my left. And there I was again. Not sitting this time, standing, my face gaunt, my lips stretched into a smile I didn't recognize. My double pressed its hands against the bars and whispered in my own voice, "You can't leave yourself behind." The light flickered, and for an instant, the corridor was filled with me. Dozens of versions, all whispering, all smiling, all waiting. Some wept, some laughed, some tore at their own skin with bloody fingers. The sound was unbearable. I dropped the flashlight. Darkness swallowed me, and in that black, they touched me. Cold hands, too many to count, brushing my arms, my neck, my face. I choked on a scream, fumbling for the light, desperate to see, even if what I saw would ruin me. My fingers found the cylinder, clicked it on, and every cell was empty. The corridor stretched silent again, but the names were still there, and one more had been added, etched, fresh and glistening, as though it were still bleeding. Died here, Arbaz Khan. The sound of footsteps approached from the far end of the hall. Heavy, slow, and getting closer. The footsteps were steady, deliberate. Each one echoed off the walls, carrying weight, carrying intent. I pressed myself against the cold iron of the nearest cell, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, though I knew it was nothing but a weak beam against the dark. My heart hammered so violently, it felt like the prison itself could hear it. The figure emerged slowly from the shadows, the way nightmares do. At first, just a shape, tall, too thin, shoulders sharp enough to cut glass. Then features began to resolve under the trembling light. Not the waxy inmate I'd seen before, not one of the faceless shadows. It was me, not the hollow doppelganger in the cells, not the broken version rocking in the corner. This was me exactly as I stood now, sweat-soaked, trembling, wide-eyed, clutching a flashlight. My exact reflection walking toward me, step by deliberate step. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat was locked tight. My double stopped a few feet away, and in perfect unison, we lifted the flashlight. My hand trembled. His didn't. His beam was steady, merciless, as he raised it to my face. And for the first time, I realized what the prison wanted. It wasn't keeping me here. It was replacing me. He smiled then, slow and terrible, a smile I've never worn. His lips moved, but I didn't hear the words with my ears. I heard them inside, in my skull, etched deep like the names on the iron. You belong here now. I'll walk out for you. I lunged, desperate, swinging the flashlight like a club, but the beam sputtered, cutting through smoke. My double dissolved into shadow, reforming behind me. His hand, my hand, clamped down on my shoulder with a grip like ice and fire at once. I screamed, thrashing, but the walls themselves seemed to close, the corridor tightening until I could barely move. The cells erupted. The others, my other selves, slammed their palms against the bars, shrieking, laughing, chanting my name. The sound drilled into my skull. I tried to run, but the corridor bent wrong, folding inward, sending me spiraling into a place that wasn't stone and iron anymore. It was memory. It was hunger. It was me. And then, just as I thought I was being pulled under completely, the world snapped. I was outside, cold night air on my face, stars sharp above, the silhouette of the prison behind me. My lungs burned. my legs numb, but I was free. Or at least I thought I was. No one met me at the gates. No guards, no researchers, nothing. Just silence. And when I stumbled to the reflection in a broken window of the guardhouse, my stomach dropped. It wasn't me staring back. The face was mine, yes, but the smile, God, that smile, was the one I'd seen in the corridor. Wide, patient, merciless. My lips didn't move, but the reflections did. And I heard the whisper, clear as ever, curling through the night. You left yourself inside. You never really left. That's why I'm telling you this. Because if you go near that prison, if you step 1 foot inside those walls, it won't be just echoes and shadows waiting for you. It will be you. And if you're not careful, you won't walk back out. Something else will. And when you look in the mirror after, you'll know.